to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Today, I have Manny Favela with me. And if you know anyone from Durango, you will know we are all related. And so I was introduced to Manny through a friend of a friend. And then lo and behold, my mom knows everybody in his family. So not only is he a warm, almost relative, but he's also a really impressive business person. So welcome, Manny. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Nayeli. I appreciate the invite. Well, to tell you a little bit about myself, born in La Purísima.
That's La Puri for those of you.
There you go. Lived in La Purísima until I went to La Secundaria, which is, obviously equivalent to middle school here. My father passed away when I was young, so my mother decided to come to the U.S. because most of my father's side of the family lived in the U.S. So we moved up here, started high school here, and then obviously went to UIC. Went to Triton College, UIC. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went into accounting, and started working for the natural gas pipeline company. That's what it was called. This was a utility company. Mm-hmm. Worked there for 2 years. Got my CPA. Ended up at McDonald's eventually. Worked for McDonald's for 26 years. Retired as a chief financial officer for McDonald's Latin America. And I think when I realized that I needed to focus more time on my family, less time on the corporate life, I decided it was time for me to focus on things that have more meaning versus just managing a profit for a large company.
Yeah, no, agreed. That's why we step away. When you were in McDonald's, can you talk a little bit about maybe your career progression there?
I started like everybody else. I started as an internal auditor back in 1990. I spent there a couple of years. McDonald's was in a high growth mode. And at the time I started, when they recruited me to the Latin America division, it was 1991, 1992 approximately. They had 85 restaurants, $100 million in sales. Wow. And they realized I was fully bilingual. I was bicultural. So they said, this is the guy we need, for the relationships and everything else. Right. So I started working with them. I spent a year and a half in that department. Then I moved to Florida, working for the senior leadership for Latin America as a financial advisor for the franchisees. From there, I moved to Puerto Rico for another 3 or 4 years as the controller for the Puerto Rico, Central America, and Caribbean region for McDonald's. I was there for 4 years, got married, decided that I needed to come back home to Chicago, came back as director of finance, then I was senior director of finance, and then eventually I took over as chief financial officer, overseeing finance, accounting, technology, development, as well as construction and real estate and construction, and franchising.
Nice. Did you do all of that from Chicago?
Yes.
Okay, because I imagine by then you had your kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did it all from Chicago, but the problem is that I still, because 100% of my responsibility was Latin America, I had to travel extensively. So
every week, probably.
I was pretty much going away for about 50% of the time. So I ended up missing, kids concerts, a quinceañera even, that really hurt me. That's when I decided to retire, by the way, when I missed a quinceañera, my cousin's quinceañera. But, you missed all of your life events, and then you realize that, look, I'm not living to work, I work to live.
Yes.
So that's when I started really thinking deep and really trying to decide what it is that I wanted to do.
I think, so my dad would say something similar. He would say, trabajamos para comer. Si dejas de comer para trabajar, you've lost your focus, right?
There you go.
So when people skip meals, he'd be like, don't skip meals. That's why we work. And it's also that personal touch of like, you know what? Now it's time. I remember I was working and I was traveling 90% of the time. And I had, mi niño tenía 3 años, and he was like, Mom, are you going to sleep here tonight? And I was like, no. He's like, Mom, are you going to sleep here tomorrow? And I was like, what am I doing? Yeah. And I told my husband, I'm like, I give myself 6 weeks to find something new because I can't, your heart breaks. And I think there's a lot of, glamour associated with the business travel, right? Like, you're out there, you're in hotels, you get to eat at, great restaurants. And I'm like, yeah, you get to do all that because of what you're giving up. Of course, you should have a good steak if you feel like crying when you're leaving home. And I think that that's really admirable that you stepped away, but you left McDonald's, but you don't sit idly.
Right.
You then decided to make your own restaurant.
Right.
Was
Yeah.
there anything in between, or did you jump straight into
No,
that?
what happened is obviously when I turned 40 and my kids were getting older, I realized, okay, I have to figure something out here. But you get used to the very fast-paced life,
Yes.
and you're always managing a ton of projects and a lot of meetings, so you cannot go from that to just sit around and watch TV. So when I say retired, it was retiring from McDonald's, not retiring from working. Fortunately, I had a friend that from church that he's been in the restaurant space his whole life. He owns taquerías. Hay una que se llama los. Actually, I don't even know. Los burritos tapatíos.
Okay.
He owns burritos tapatíos, burritos mexicanos. Him and his brother have interest in several different restaurants. But he wanted a different concept. He wanted a little bit more organized. He wanted it all to be part of one corporation instead of each restaurant having different ownership. And he wanted it a little bit more upscale. And he goes, would you be interested in being part of this? And I said, look, I'm not a restaurant guy. I worked in the restaurant industry my whole life, but I'm an administrator.
Right.
I said, you run the restaurants, I do the administration, you manage everything inside, I manage everything outside. If you're willing to do that, let's do that.
Adelante. Yeah.
And we did. We opened one restaurant, and it started very slow. It was losing a lot of money, but, I always kept telling him, as long as sales go up, be patient, we'll eventually get there. And we opened the second one. The second one was very successful, and now we have 11, and, happy to be part of this venture. And it keeps me busy, which is the most important thing.
So Burrito, Parrilla, Mexicana, right?
Yes.
And one of the things I think that really differentiates you from other burrito places is how you treat your employees. And this is something like, if you know Manny, big brains, bigger heart, right? So he wants to make sure that everyone on his team is well taken care of. So what were some of the initiatives you took to make sure you had a good, stable team?
Yeah, one of the things that when I decided to join this concept, I told my friend. I mean, again, we both go to church. We both know each other. He has a really big heart. He always believed in giving, helping people and giving back. So I told him, let's create this concept. I'm not interested in doing it to make money or to make a lot of money. Obviously, you need if you want to have a healthy business, you got to be profitable in order to grow. Yeah. I go, but let's do a balance. If the business does very, very well, let's treat the employees very well. If you can't, well, you can't if the employee is struggling. But if the business does well, let's make sure that we share the wealth. And we started doing it. When things started going really good, we implemented a bonus program where we said, let's take 10% of the profits and always give it back to the key employees that helped us make it happen. And it was beautiful to see employees getting checks that they were not expecting, just doing that. And then from that, once we got a little bit bigger, we said, okay, maybe now we can offer health insurance, because to offer health insurance, if you only have one or two locations, nobody wants you. It's very expensive,
yeah.
And the insurance companies don't really care about
right.
you. But once it got bigger, and because it was all part of the same company, it was a larger company, then we were able to offer health insurance, dental, eye coverage. And then after that, we started thinking about 401k and trying to teach the employees that, you got to set money aside for your retirement. Something even as basic as educating the employees. And $50, per paycheck. Right. You'll be surprised that by the time you hit 60, if you're 20 now, that will become $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. In time. And if you want to go back to Mexico and retire, I go, that money's yours. Right. Wherever you go, that money will follow you. Sure enough, that program started 3 years ago, and now it has over $400,000 in it. So
that's amazing. So I think it's really important. You and I talked when I had my trucking company. I also started a 401k early. I say early because now it's mandated, right? The state of Illinois requires the what is it? The sunset. I forgot
what they call it, but you have to offer the option, and employees have to decline it.
Right.
If you don't have your own 401k, you have to send the money to the state.
Right. Yeah. So, I think that was really ahead of the time. And I think so many people, if you know right now, like of the people who are on Social Security, like 2/3 of them only have that.
Yeah.
And so to plan for the future, and then you think about the industry that's been hurt the most with retirement planning is the service industry. So I love that you did this for your team, and I think it speaks to your leadership. So how has retention been?
I always try to think about do the right thing, and everything else will fall in place. Don't do it with the intention of having retention. Hopefully, retention is the outcome of what you're doing.
Right, it's a result. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, but the real test happened during COVID. When COVID hit and restaurants were really struggling finding employees, that many restaurants were closing the lobbies because they couldn't find enough people. We were never short-staffed. When COVID first hit, we started opening on Sundays just so we could keep all of the employees working.
That's great. Yeah.
When we didn't really know what was going to happen, if we were even going to have enough sales to keep the doors open. So we opened on Sundays, offer more hours to the employees, especially those that had two jobs and lost one and wanted to work more hours with us. But after that, when the labor pool became really tight and people were struggling to find people and everybody was going around stealing employees from each other, we were always fully staffed and we never really struggled. We always had enough people asking and wanting to work for us. We have a lot of cousins and family members that work together, which is a good sign because that means that if the people that work for us are bringing their family members, that they must like what they have.
Yeah.
And to this date, we've never really struggled being fully staffed. We've always been fully staffed. And on top of that, we actually opened 2 restaurants during the pandemic. So.
Wow. So you have 11 locations,
Yes.
right? All over Chicago. And knowing a little bit of your personal life, you are also raising entrepreneurs in your house, right?
Yes.
How do you, as someone who has worked both corporate and entrepreneur, how do you help your son dream? Like, because he has a beautiful, like, I love his energy and who he is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then the thing about the kids, every kid is so different. One of the things that I always explain to my kids is I don't remember ever, when I was young, thinking that work was supposed to be enjoyable. This is like a new concept for the new generation, right?
Yes,
I'm supposed to like it.
yeah.
It has to make sense. I go, the thought of enjoyable was never, associated with work. But,
No.
But I think every kid is so different. They all like different things. The first one is all into the corporate world. He likes the corporate aspect of it, the politics, the socializing aspect of it. The second one hates it. So it's one of those things. So how do you motivate the kids to pursue really what they want? The only requirement I had for my second one was get a college education. You can pursue whatever you want. I don't even care if you pursue a job in that field. I just want you to know, be educated, get a field in finance, accounting, or something that would help you no matter what you do. And he did that, and he said, look, I'll get the bachelor's degree, but I want to explore other options. And then out of nowhere, he was trying some kind of website for cleaning services. Then he found out that it was a lot more difficult than he thought. And then he started saying, hey, how about if I do agua frescas? That's when he started the whole concept. And I go, look, I'm here to help you, especially when you go into school. And if things don't work out, at least you can always go pursue a job in the field that you studied.
Right.
Our role has always been to support him and to let him fly and dream. And hopefully he'll end in a place where, he really enjoys what he does. And that's what he's exploring right now. So he's in the process of putting something together and creating agua frescas, and we gave him a chance to put him in our restaurants. They sold pretty well, and now he's trying to actually do it a little more professionally and get it done by a professional bottler and all of that. So
No, I love Tim. He's so good. You think about our listeners are both, right? We have a group of listeners that are entrepreneurs that have gone out there and forged their way and are, living what we consider the American dream, right? Coming over here, you're
Absolutely,
we want to start our own thing. And then we have big presence in corporate, and we know that right now, Latinos are only, I can't remember, I know it was under 10% of the executive leadership team, but we're also almost 30% of the workforce.
Right.
So we're not seeing that representation in senior leadership. How did you feel in senior leadership? And then I know you're a big advocate of giving back, and I know you're heavily involved in our alma mater, UIC. How do you encourage people to move into leadership positions, especially when they can be hard? If we think about, what you just said about people want to be happy, and sometimes those leadership positions are not happiness positions.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things is that all of us need to really find out what is it that is important to us, what drives us and what helps us, what makes us wake up, want to wake up every morning and make a difference. And a difference really depends on what is important to you. In my case, I think I've always been an advocate or bringing Hispanics up because there's a lot of talent in the Hispanic community. There's a lot of very smart people. A lot of our people decide to be entrepreneurs and they avoid the corporate life in the corporate world because they don't like it, and that's great. And they go on and become great business people and they help the community out, and there's a place for that. But then there is the other area of influence, which is government and then corporate. And yes, we have a very low representation still today. And part of the problem is that once somebody makes it to like a board position, every company wants him because him or her because they're like, oh, this is a safe person.
Right.
They're always afraid of what the Hispanic is going to bring.
Right,
Is it going to be very loud? Is it going to be very problematic? So once they find someone, everybody wants that someone. This is why you see the same Latino person in many different boards.
Yes.
Instead of having a lot of Latinos in different
Across
companies.
them.
And so I think our role is when we get to areas of influence to make sure that we continue to to create the pipeline, to continue to put names in there, and identify people that have the not so much the people being there, because the people that are already there, everybody wants them. The people that have the potential, keep an eye on them, continue to work with them, so that eventually they're given the opportunity. And then, because the more people we have there, the greater the voice. Everything that we do will come back to the community. This is one of the reasons why I decided to be part of Northwestern, the hospital network on the board, because these are places that have a lot of resources. And when you think about what are the areas of influence, health, education, and being an employer, but in the healthcare space, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of resources. So how do we make sure that these resources are also making it to the Hispanic community? How do we make sure that there's a voice? And the organizations are also looking for minorities, but sometimes they just don't know where to find them. So I think for those of us that are in those in those tables, having those discussions, we can certainly make a big difference saying, hey, have you thought of these people? Let me give you some names,
Right.
And bring it up that way. And hopefully over the years that we will be able to see that representation.
How do you get in front of people to be on a board? Because I know a lot of times, we have people who are on boards, but it's a pay-to-play board. How do you become visible for the boards?
Well, I think it's all about connections at the end of the day. Taking advantage of opportunities that come up. There's also organizations. You have the Economic Club of Chicago. You have the Chicago Club. You got all of these different places where a lot of the high-level executives are members of. And it is very different when you see someone in a relaxed environment versus you see someone in a network environment.
Right.
When people are networking, everybody wants to network, and you have 5 minutes. It's almost impossible to make an impression on an individual.
Right.
But if you and I have a reason to meet, or if you're part of the same club, or if you're part of the same board or the same organization, now we have something in common to discuss. And when you do that, then that drops, it drops the guards, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I could see you being part of my board. I can see that you bring all this expertise. Hispanics have a lot of cultural, richness and insights that they can give a company. So when they start realizing that, and it's a person that you and I can talk to, and I enjoy the conversation, then automatically people start asking, hey, would you be interested in, considering this? Would you be interested in considering that? How about this opportunity, that opportunity? And then you start, deciding where do you want to go. But the opportunities come as a product of you being at the right places. But you have to be proactive, to be at those places.
I agree. I love that advice. And I think people need to do that more often, because you're right. We go to so many networking events. You got your stack of cards, you're giving them out, and you get home and you're like, what? Who, like,
who are all these people?
Who are these people in my pocket? And then, but I think that when you make those meaningful connections, and one of the things I always encouraged my team when I was in corporate was, when we go out to a dinner or we go to an event, don't sit with the team. We sit by you all the time. Sit by new people, talk to them, get to know them. And I was at a dinner, and it was at Smith & Wollensky's, and I remember I sat next to this gentleman, and the course of my life changed, because my team got disbanded, and I called him and said, I remember talking to you at this dinner, and I loved what your team is doing, and I want to be part of your team. And he said, great, here's 2 job descriptions. interview for them, and then be prepared to move to Texas in 2 weeks.
There you go.
And I was like, okay, you know. But I think if I had sat with the same people or been in the same environment, like you have to put yourself and be a fish out of water and feel uncomfortable to be able to meet the people, right? I always say it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, and I think growing up or when I first graduated from college, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes when it came to networking. I didn't know what questions to ask. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like a fish out of the water. You know, it's like nothing I say is smart enough, and it was not impressive. And then I started realizing, well, these people are the same as, we're all the same at the end of the day. We all have the same value. We all have our struggles. The people that are on top also went through the phases that we're going through. Mm-hmm. And then you start saying, what am I afraid of? Let me start asking some meaningful questions. And then instead of asking like, what is it like to be you, or said, no, I said, what drives you? What's important to you?
Right. Why do you wake up?
Exactly. What advice do you have for somebody like myself? Or you start having more meaningful, deeper conversations. And I think that is what helps people connect. The other thing that people do many times is they get invited to an event and they want to make sure that they are remembered. So they have to participate. They have to say something. I tell people, if you don't have something smart to say, don't say it.
Right.
Right. Because if a dumb thing comes out of your lips, people are, on the contrary, instead of making a good impression, you're going to make a bad impression.
100%.
Only make a comment if it's relevant, if you are, if it's in your area of expertise, and if your intention really is to understand what is being said or to contribute. Never make a comment to impress, because people will read through that like there's no tomorrow immediately.
Yes. And also, it's okay. Like, silence is okay. Yeah. I'd rather sit in silence than have just someone talking or spewing information that's not relevant or interesting, or, and sometimes I think people struggle with just sitting.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. And there's always, even within a board, when you sit down, you always have the people that talk a lot, and you immediately kind of block them in a way, because out of everything they say, maybe 10-20% is relevant, and that's just a lot of noise. And then you have the quiet ones that when they speak, everybody listens.
Right.
Because the minute they have something to say, it's because it is in fact meaningful.
Yeah.
You want to be that quiet one that everybody wants to listen to, versus the other one that everybody's hoping that you just stop talking and let somebody else say something.
Or so they could walk away.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So,
one of the things I love that you talk about is enjoying every phase of your career. Are there times that have been more memorable for you, or do you think back to a time when you're just like, wow, this is when I felt like happy, or this moment propelled me, or this made me feel excited? Yeah,
there is, I think more than anything else, I've always believed in always working for a better tomorrow, because sometimes in the corporate environment you get caught in very difficult projects or very difficult things. And I even tell my kids, you're going to go through difficult phases, but do not get stuck there. It's okay to go through it, work hard, but always work on getting out of that mess. Change areas, change departments, or address the issue so that whatever happened today that cost you all this stress doesn't happen tomorrow.
Yes.
Because life is too short to be wasting so much energy into something that is not gonna, you're not gonna take with you. You're not gonna remember. So that's always important. But there's always those moments, and they usually happen unexpectedly, not necessarily planned, where you just realize that you did something really big. And I remember one time we were at a McDonald's convention. My boss and I was standing at my boss got the big penthouse at the Disney, one of the resorts, and we had this view to Disney World, and we had the fireworks, and him and I were just sitting out having a glass of wine, and he goes, life is good, Manny. Yeah. It's like, and then you sit there and then you really start to contemplate and say, wow, God has been good. This is a great place to be. But we had just gone through. We franchised all of Latin America, and it was McDonald's largest transaction ever. It was 2 years of complete stress and a lot of work. But at the end, when we finished it, and then we look back and say, we did a good thing. This was good. We did great for the company. This was a great deal. But, when it's over, you just sit there and enjoy it and said, okay, those moments that happen. The same thing happened, and another special moment for me, and it's not work related, is when my son graduated from MIT. It's like, who would ever think my kid would go to MIT, right? And then he went to MIT, he graduated, he got his master's degree in 4 years out of MIT.
Wow.
In computer science.
Wow.
And then just seeing him, get his diploma and come back, and I'm like, This is good. So sometimes I always tell people it's the unexpected little moments when you just take a deep breath and say, life is good. Regardless of what you do, even if you work, in a hard job and a blue collar but when you see your kids progressing and moving up, and you can just take a deep breath and say,
Yeah, it was
this
worth
is
it.
this is the dream.
Yeah,
It was worth it.
It was
it's
worth
good.
it.
We did good. Our kids are doing okay.
Yeah.
So
I think to different moments throughout my career, and I remember I was having a really hard time, and I was thinking about leaving PepsiCo, and I loved PepsiCo. I just was it was going through a rough time, and I remember this same gentleman who I sat next to at that dinner. He came up to me and he said, "Don't do anything stupid." And I was like, "How do you know?" And he's like, "I just know." And you know what? Like, that was like the calming voice I needed to stick it out.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what? You're right. We're going to go through hard times, and then there's going to be a moment. And I remember, like, later on, we're all having wine and drinks and stuff. And I was like, thank you. Thank you for reminding me to stick it out. Thank
Yeah.
you for telling me that it would be over soon. I think a lot of times we make very impulsive decisions without thinking about the long term. And you think about that project that you just talked about, 2 years of franchising all of Latin America. Must have been awful. That must have been a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
A lot of paperwork, lots of meetings, lots of evenings, lots of weekends. But then to have that moment and know, like, you know what? We finished. It's over, and we're okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too, when it comes to the corporate world, is it's always important for people to know really what makes them happy. Everybody thinks like, oh, I just need to keep moving up. I need to keep
Right.
moving up. I always ask my kids, why do you need to keep moving up? Really, what is it that you're after? Is it more money?
Right.
I go, because money hardly ever brings
Right.
happiness.
Right.
Okay, so it's not more money. Is it power? Because all of that's going to drown you eventually, and it comes at a very high cost. Really find out what it is that makes you happy. In some cases, it is.
Right.
Some people are made to be CEOs. Some people are made to have a good job and a good salary, but their motivation and their happiness is at home with their family,
Right.
or big family gatherings. And if that's what it is, well, then make sure that you don't get stuck pushing for promotions and
Right.
miss what really
And
makes you
miss all
happy.
those
right.
things because
so
you've been
understand
doing those.
what drives you, what is it, and then balance your career, whether it's corporate or entrepreneurship. Balance it with whatever it is that really drives you, because we only get one life to live. We don't get a second we don't get a second shot.
Yeah.
You're 50, 60 years old, you don't get a second.
No one's making it out alive, right?
Right. So, you only get one shot at it. So don't waste a big chunk of your life in something that leads to nothing. No matter what happens, if you do the right things and you focus on what matters to you, no matter what the outcome is in the corporate or the entrepreneurship world, you're going to be fine because you focus on what mattered to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of people forget that. And then they're retired and they're miserable because they're like, I don't know what I
missed
want.
all this. I'm not in
Yeah,
these pictures.
yeah.
I didn't go. I'm not close to these people anymore because I was never there when I was. I love
That's
that.
exactly it. And sometimes you have to say no. I had to say no to some big opportunities because the saying yes would mean move, go to places I didn't want to be in, drag my family along with me. I would say,
Yeah.
what? No. I'm sorry, but work is not my number one priority. It's like number 3 or 4.
Yeah.
If my faith, my family, and my extended family comes first, I'm not gonna take the 4th priority and
Right.
go away from 1, 2, and 3. It's
Right.
just not gonna happen.
It's not worth it
Right.
at that point. No,
Right,
I
so-
think that is really good advice. It's understanding your values and who you are as a person and why you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Manny, I think this has been amazing. Like, we are cheerleading you. We're a los burritos, so go try one at Manny's place and try the
There you
agua
go.
fresca. I appreciate you coming and sharing that because I think it's really important to, one, see someone who has had an amazingly, like, you could say, an extremely successful corporate career, and then has reinvented himself doing something, similar but different. Sometimes it's scary to think about like leaving the safety of corporate. But if you have the right skill set and if you have the right passion, I think you could be successful in everything that you do. And I love how you value family and just everything that you've shared today. So thank you.
No, thank you, Nayeli. I appreciate the time. It's been an incredible ride, and I'm just, I'm just thankful for how things have played out. And I always tell people too is keep your eyes open for opportunities because they come when you least expect them.
Yes.
You know,
I
they
agree.
usually don't come when you're looking for them.
Yeah. Yes.
Keep your eyes open because sometimes they just come out of nowhere and you're stuck on what you're doing and you don't pay attention to things.
Yeah,
This
you're like,
burrito
"Wait."
opportunity came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
You know?
Let's do it.
Absolutely,
Not being
so.
scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Corporate Cafecito.